Greetings. This is Dorphanage, and this is another episode of Liberating Minds Podcast. Yeah, na leo tuko na the man himself, Monaja. Yeah, hip hop MC, historian, kofia ni mingi.
Lakini leo nimeamua dread tu.
Naona kile nimedua hapa. Once an MC, forever an MC, si ndio?
Hiyo. Tangu totoni ben.
So salimia watu.
Monaja kama venye mmesikia, kama vile Dorphan ameni describe, mimi hizo happy to be in your company. Happy to be part of the Liberating Minds Podcast community. Kaende. Najua mbona unacheka lakini sijatumia hiyo phrase. Okay, nyewe mjashikanisha kuna governor mmoja county yetu nataka kutumia hiyo phrase, so that is not an endorsement.
So tuko hapo hivi, so this is I'm supposed to be hosting this and then he's supposed to be the interviewee, but me and Moja, I cannot interview Monaja, like I think relationship yangu na yeye ni ile design that this is a conversation, yani me tunapiga tu gumzo, yani this is a conversation amongst comrades, a conversation amongst artists, you know. So basically that's what it's going to be, a conversation. And I think first mimi nasema the first time kusikia Monaja ilikuwa ngoma fulani mlidoingi na Urban Scotch
Flow, ilikuwa inaitwa
Flow. Yeah. I think so that was the first time nilikusikia, but also but, you know, but kukusikia, but jina yako of course kuna float around because me coming into the poetry community, I came in Nairobi 2012, right? Into the poetry community which you'd already been a part of through either Wapi and open mics Kakwani na nini, right? So and I think hata kwa ngoma yako nini kina go down Covida, kulikuwa na mseka L poet kina Manjoro, watu wenye walikuwa active kwa the poetry scene at that time, unajua. So jina yako ilikuwa around, yani siku kupata hiyo enzi ya freestyle jo mimi nilipata Wapi kaime stop alafu basically nikakuja kwa busy, nikakuwa active kwa poetry scene na spoken word nini kila kitu. Alafu I think pia Sarakasi kulikuwa na hip hop hookup nini happen,
ilikuwa nakuja hiyo small lethal na nafsi huru. I think nilitokea hapo once mara kadhaa, right? Na hizo platforms, so ilikuwa ngumu yani ku miss out on name yenye inajulikana, but I think kuinteract na sana yako pia ilikuja properly, imekama a bit later, because I think ulichukua break pia at some point in shule, I think kazi pia. As far as projects go, my first proper interaction na project yako ilikuwa Temaimba sasa, right? Temaimba, which is hapo ndo kuna ngoma kaa niko juu. Kulikuwa ngoma gani? Shaisikia msana yuto Monaja. Nchi yetu ya Kenya. Mziki ya raia.
And I think kwanza nchi yetu ya Kenya ndo umeandika like
10 years
za Moi,
hiyo 10 years za Kibaki, za Kenyatta, za 24 years za Moi.
And I think that's why now after the historian in you comes out, right? Properly, like, because people don't for those people don't know, Monaja is also a trained historian pretty much, like amesomea history kampo na kila kitu, and I think that's hiyo ni kitu come out kwa muziki yako pia. And I feel like tumefika mahali nikajuana, nikajua pia umetoka Meru kama mimi, right? Which of course kuna watu wasema Meru haimba, sijui sisi tunafanya nini.
Tukatia hizo enzi by the way.
Sijui sisi tunafanya nini. But essentially ni whatever the stereotypes ziko zitaendelea kuwa, but tuko hapa tumekelea kazi, tunaekelea kazi, tutazidi kuekelea kazi, si ndio?
Tazidi kuzidi.
So I guess swali la kwanza ni naweza kuuliza ni when is the first time you figure out unaweza do kitu, like ama ungetaka kudo kitu?
Tuko watoi mimi na Sara spoken word artist,
na Sara the poet,
tuko watoi, tulikuwa tunachambua album, tulikuwa tunachapa in like mid 90s, tulikuwa tunachambua albums za Bone Thugs and Harmony, Snoop,
kazi na show
Tupac, kila mtu atazeeka, so iko sawa. So tulikuwa tunachambua hizo albums, na with time pia tukaanza kuandika lines nini hizo. Sasa niko primo nikianza niko na rap na accent ya majuu, kwa jaribu kwa kaa
any chance tutasikia hiyo leo like
ndachoma
tunataka kusikia nini like
hiyo ilikuwa
Monaja Jones unajua
baza acha hizo so but nikamwacha tu nini nikacha nikiwa high school nakumbuka kuna best fulani yangu alikuwa ananiuliza yani alikuwa na zile ananipoke like mbona unarapigi na ngoso lakini unajua like unajaribu kwa yoyo so kuna vile tu nikajisoma true kuna time tulikuwa tunaishi majuu lakini sikukaa sana ile design ati nikaanza
kwa influence
unaona kama mseka bambu ama kitu kama hiyo so I felt like that wasn't me and I felt like my reality ni kurap na wase nilikuwa na rap hiyo time nilikuwa napata respect yao Keishaka na K-South wase so kwanza kuandika na kumbuka my first verses ilikuwa tu kubig up wasa uko fulani nini na so ikaendelea kwa sekamu Afrika pia kuna influence but basically hao two hip hop groups za Kenya Keishaka na K-South au ndio ilikuwa base ya kila kitu unaona of course kunaweza kuwa na Isa hapa na pale Mwafrika Chiwawa Judge Mashifta Kitusiwa nani aheshimu Kitusiwa ni is a staple so but mainly I'd say ni Abbas na particularly hiyo verse yake ya mwisho ya Kapuka Dis
hapo actually ndo nilikuwa niende next to yani I think something anybody who's been a Monaja fan for a bit like the one thing that is very consistent in Monaja songs ni hata kani it's a serious song lazima kuna light note mahali unajua kwanza kuna kitu nataka tu test
ndio
nataka tucheze mama mboga kina go down tuone kama atatuongeza nyanya 3
ndio nataka mboga
we need to put that to test
sindio nachora ngoma zenye zinabamba watu mboga kisikia hii hata kuongeza
siji kama kwa economy mama mboga saizi anakona mboga 3 nini ngumu nyanya 3 za kupeana lakini so basically
hizo siku pengine
so your influences are in terms of that like I think because I say there are two aspects kwa muziki yako ni educational right
asante thank you
ni educational muziki yako pia ni humorous pia like ni nuanced humor yani it's not really like you're not trying to be humorous but lazima kutakuwa tuna something yenye ndacha msi akifikiria naona kile umedua hapo unajua so basically like inatoka wapi
hiyo natoka well ndio hata Primo nilikuwa I think nilikuwa na always nilikuwa na hiyo kutaka kufanya watu wacheke na kuiona in other people ilikuwa hasa pia inanifanya nicheke ni include kama part of who I am so I think early influences za comical rap of course unaweza pata kulikuwa na hii rap alikuwa anaitwa Skilo I wish I was a little bit taller. I wish I was a baller. I wish I had a rabbit and a hat and a bat and a 6 point. So alikuwa na make rap very simple messages ziko kwa muziki yake.
I think wanaitaga nini self-deprecating. It's basically where you unachukua two aspects like the things that people look down upon and kind of it's Biggie akisema black and ugly as ever however I wear Gucci down to the socks unajua like so basically mimi najua mimi ni mnono alafu so what else do you have to say
exactly making fun of yourself so nile hiyo ndio kitu ili stand out kwangu and then later on of course msika watu K-South lani walikuwa hiyo Mr. Policeman sare malebo heri tu sare malebo waseti mitego wadhani sini mababi jua malebo kijana unajua umefanya hatia kwanza toa mkono kwenye mfuko tabia alafu anaongea kama karao yani unajua anatoka wapi Kariobangi atumevuta nini vuta bangi hebu tema chini leo mtaimba kama vinanda Abbas alikuwa gawa like Abbas kuna time shai recite hiyo verse yote alikuwa kwa event fulani nika recite hiyo verse yote yani alikuwa ni my biggest influence nasema. Juu akona anaweza kuja conscious, anaweza fanya ucheke, ako versatile, unaona. So oni msali ni influence sana, like hiyo kusikia hiyo verse ya 3 ya Kapukadis, alafu hiyo flow, like nikali kwa na have fun with it, alikuwa tu anajibamba. So yani hizo ndio verses zenye zilinifanya tu nitake tu kuandika ngoma zenye zinabambisha wasee. Then of course hiyo Keishaka na hiyo album yao ni wakati walete hiyo vibe ya history na tuko hapa tunapitia hizi mashida kama vijana nini
like social commentary. Alafu si not just any social commentary, ni social commentary yenye iko informed and accessible and relatable. Jana rap kwa Sheng Msikaroba wa Keishaka lini influence sana. But all of them Vigeti pia na hiyo flow yake influence kila mtu. Mashifta Kitusiwa na lyricism yake like because mtu mwingine usio pia ni I think Kitusiwa ni anakuga like ni ule mse kama sasa kwa hiyo humor yake ni schooled yani. Humor yake Kitusiwa atakuuliza kaa damu ni nzito mbona ipimo. Like nani ufikiria hivi jo? Ona ama kongoba kama jambazi bwana, ati gari zinaongeza mbio zikukaribia. Shuku mikono zinakusalimia. Wanna get like so inakuacha ukifikiria because me feel
account ile alisho design ya cholera.
For the longest time. For the longest time, by the way, I think ilikuwa unajua mbunge aliyepalara, sio? Mbunge alikuwa on show for the longest time hakuwa najua. So until I shared like I think an article yenye ilikuwa imeandikwa juu ya Munya K on Facebook. And then akacheki nimekuwa nikisikia ngoma miaka yote. Basi kwa ijua wanaongelea nani?
Hamunya K kwa
corruption zero tolerance.
What?
Alafu alifanywa nini?
Account ile design ya cholera. Man, siwa.
Like
masniper maarufu kwa building kwa roof.
Man. So siwa, it's like ana like and the way ana bring the message home man. Lazima ufikirie. Lazima yani you always check vitu the same way, right? And I think those subtle nuances like that make even some of the best MCs, some of the best artists like we appreciate. Hizo vitu zenye umse ajaribu, umse anaidu, unaona. Hata nikisikiza ngoma kama hata niko juu yani. Right? Because I feel like that was a very vulnerable song, unajua.
It was.
Right? Unajua ilikuwa ni struggles tunapitia. Sometimes yani upigie makofi, inabidi pia ujipigie makofi. Inabidi pia I think which is for me ni kama it's like what najua is to me like because najua pia it come from that point yenye
uko chini
ku articulate hizo struggles zetu kama wasanii, struggles zetu kama vijana, right? Struggles zetu kama wananchi yani. Hizi vitu zote tunapitia na dreams tuko nazo, tuko na aspirations yani. Tuko Nairobi, there's a reason tuko Meru sasa hivi. Tumetoka Meru, the reason tuko Meru ni juu like we want to see something better, right? And we want to bring something better even to ourselves and our communities here.
That's true.
Right? And hiyo ndio quest tumekuwa yenyewe. So I think ilikuwa tu kujaribu kuembody hizo and I think hata leo najua niliandika 2014 but say a lot of people like mpaka saa hii tu mse anakuambia kuna watu wameni inbox mpaka online sana kwambia nani aliandika kaigi, ngombe mimi niliandika because watu wameni niliandika hiyo melody hiyo chorus. So amia sema buda yani shukran tuju your piece will take through one of the roughest times in my life yani unajua vitu kama hizo yani ni flattering by ni humbling tuju. Mimi nilikuwa
express au kuna fikiria jinsi mwingine.
Unaona so wakati wanasema umechoka kula maragwe hata jizo zinakufanya unashuta unajua like hiyo ni reality tunajua. Right? Buda wakati umekula ugali sukuma mpaka Mbako na mahindi zitamea kwa mwili or something unajua.
Na mboga. Na mboga tupata tu kiboga tu.
And I think hiyo ndio kitu yenye basically na feel imekosa pia kwa representation ikiangalia kwa mainstream narratives. Basically hizo side B of the stories ni wazipatikani. Hakuna hiyo diversity. It's like either it's ina feel good kabisa ama say wana highlight the worst yenye happen kwa society, but hawaonyeshi design yenye watu wanajaribu kuarticulate hizi vitu, which is something I feel wanajaribu kudu. Hata because wewe kuna hizo hata kwa projects zako kuna hizo projects you're just trying to make people feel good about, right? Themselves and also enjoy like because hatuwezi lia kila siku, unajua. We need to have the hope that kesho pita itakuwa better. We can't have hope if we are totally disillusioned and totally hopeless, unajua.
Tunasemaga what's the point of a revolution if you can't dance?
If you can't dance, and, you know, if you can't fall in love, if you can't make love, unajua, like what's the essence of it, right? Unajua, because those are the things zenye zinatufanya human, right? So Tamaimba, I think ilikuwa I'm sure you the time ulikuwa unaanza ku experiment na music more like in terms of melodies na nini.
Nilikuwa nimeanza choruses, hata nilikuwa nishaanza kuandika 2009 hapo, but aggressively by hapo mid 2014 2015 ndio sasa nikaanza ku kind of explore. Juu nilikuwa nasikia nika 16s naweza andika. But now unawezaje sukuma hii kitu upige, hata unaweza imba ufanye, najua. So ilikuwa kind of growing at that side of me. So sasa baadaye ndio ikakuwa yani not just rap, ikakuwa ni na tena nachanganya pia influences of my past. Meaning say one of the people pia hapa Kenya men influence sana, and I think he doesn't really get the credit he deserves, ni Waire. Kama nimejuana siku zinajua like akona hiyo
necessary noise,
like alikuwa na fuse, and then the genius with him ni alikuwa naweza angedu R&B, angedu dancehall. So hiyo chuki baina yenu bila nafasi kutawala, wengi wangalidhani kuwa kwako yeye ni dada. So hiyo una rap,
it's a melodious rap kind of.
So like ni rap lakini nakuja na ni unaimba lakini nakuja na rhythm fulani, which also takes me back to ase kama Beenie Man wenye nisikiza nikigrow up, Bone Thugs and Harmony. Hizo enzi kulikuwa jamaa alikuwa anaitwa Snow, alikuwa alimba ngoma inaitwa Informer, later on Damian Marley. So nikaona like nisijifunge tu niseme I'm a hip hop artist. I can do more than just I'm an artist who can do many more things, who can do much more than just rap, waona. So ndio hiyo sasa Temaimba ikazaliwa, nikaona pia not just singing but also African influences. Project yangu ya last I think ndio imekuwa the last two projects tuseme zimekuwa zikiingia hasa kutumia African instruments, shakers, wandende, hata hii Kenya tunaitaga ibere kwa Meru, hiyo yenye unekaga
jingles.
So you nika feel I come from this side of the world, this side of Africa. Mbona nisijaribu beat sound kama DJ Premier ama Dr. Dre? Mbona tusifanye kitu yenye ni yetu?
You know, it's an interesting thing. I think kumekuwa na hiyo question Afrocentricity, you know, like people have been trying to kind of reconnect with their roots more, and essentially which is something I'm all for, yani, because there's so much, and I feel there's so much potential hatuja tap into, right? But also I always overlook like the liberate marginalization yenye may bring about hizo disparities, because there are people who are cultural or custodians like across the board, right? But now because the thing about cultural work pia inakuwa gani kazi nyingine ni kazi nyingine thankless too, right?
That's true.
Like people, because prior traditionally cultural practitioners walikuwa taken care of na community, because they understand the essence of like the people like lead the music, the people, because our mother is storytellers when you want to keep the history and the heritage alive and everything. But now you find people who are doing it like as a labor of love, or banking on just passion, and you wonder how far can we take this, right? Mm-hmm. And it's a good thing when our young people embracing that more, because pia inatupea edge. Part of the reason a lot of our pop music inakuwa very hard to export ni juu, it's like we're giving the West like a damped down version of their own product, right?
Yeah.
And that's why if you're a cultural artist, it's very easy for you to hit hata kwa festivals abroad and everything, because for you unawape something they're not used to, something they don't know, right? Even as a cultural practitioner, it's very easy kupata hata opportunities, which in itself it's not it's a problem in itself, as much as pia inakamna na some advantages. It's a problem in itself, because what has ended up happening in most cases ni our art end up kuwa exoticized, right? It's like rather than consume it as a cultural and view it as such, then you're quite exoticized to an extent where it's no longer accessible to the people who've inspired it, right? Yeah. So we unaona like how can we be able to navigate your balance between, because essentially we are also products of the world, right? As much as we are products of our own roots and everything, we are products of the world, because we didn't choose to be here at this particular time. We were born into this. Like, we were born at a time where there's hip hop and it's coming from, but then how do we own that without necessarily getting lost in the process?
We are children of globalization. We are children of globalization. We grew up on hip hop, we grew up on many of those American artists. At a certain point in time, we were trying to be like them, replicas of them. I think the answer to that question lies with understanding the history, going above and beyond to understand what was lost. And history, you don't have to be trained. All you just have to do, ukienda mashambani, bonga na ule mzee mwenye alizaliwa 1930 akipatikana. Try to record those conversations. Muulize naweza kurecord, akurudishie, akufunze hizo nyimbo zote za Kikamba zenye zilikuwa zinaimba kiwa mtoto. I as a researcher have been doing a lot of research recently on the spirituality of the Meru people. That's my community, our community. And actually, interestingly, it did not start out with a deliberate attempt to find out what was happening. It was I did a research project in 2017 elections. Niko nafuata siasa za Meru County. So sasa hiyo kuimba, former governor Monaja was very good at singing. Hiyo kuimba, trying to charm people.
And of course it's always like the folklore,
exactly. So mimi niko na akili ya kizungu. I mean, my dad was a diplomat. Mimi sasa hiyo vitu zote ziliniingia. So but at a certain point in time ukizeeka unasikia I can't be American because that's not who I am. Those are not my ancestors. Hii yote yenye nimeletewa ni ukoloni, tukaichukua, then we took it as reality. So you are supposed to eat breakfast, 10 o'clock tea, lunch, 4 o'clock tea, sup. Mambo yangu wako anachukua tea breakfast venye because uchukua siku hizi, unaona. But since that outlook was sold to us as this is how life should be and this is how a normal person should live, we took it for granted. So by the time I was doing that research, I realized even music-wise, I needed to flavor my music with the sounds, the tunes, the melodies of our people. And then I said, if you're trying to capture that uniqueness, and don't even think of it as an attempt to own who you are supposed to be.
Who you are, really.
Who you are. And who you're supposed to be, because colonialism and what came after, it diverted us from our own course of history.
And now trying to get that back means you have to read, you have to go back and speak to people who are older than you, some who even believe certain practices were indigenous and yet they were not. I've had old people telling me that caning was a practice in our community. It was not there before colonialism. I was surprised when I spoke to another old person. I was lucky to have interacted with my great grandmother. Alikuwa anaitwa Keke, na kila time tulikuwa tunapatana naye alikuwa niambia mtanizika hapo. Alikuwa na point to a corner of their homestead, alikuwa sema that's where you're going to bury me. Wandhi kanara, and then anakutemea mate, which is a blessing.
Yeah.
So alikuwa sema mtanizika hapa ndio ni walinde. And that question always kept on disturbing me. Ni walinde, how would you si watu endaga hell na heaven, like
yeah,
walinde? Then later on when I'm doing my research, I'm realizing their conception of the afterlife was not similar to the conception of the Christian conception of what happens. Sijui unachomeka, sijui unaenda heaven. That was not what our beliefs were. When I speak to people who are born in their 40s, because my great-grandmother was probably born in early 1900s. She died around 2005. If not, maybe she probably even was born in the late 18th century, if I'm not wrong. But when I speak to people who are younger, who are born in their 40s, and I asked them what would happen when one would die, what was the Meru beliefs, they would say nothing. We never used to believe in anything.
Yeah, but you also you have to look at that particular point in history, what's happening, right? Yeah. Because my grandmother is fairly young, you know, like your emergency period, you know, time mtoi shule. So a lot of the experiences, because I've been at loggerheads with her, and even when we talk about the Mau, because she was in school at that time, right? And she's in school at a time, and you have colonial administrators in schools, you know, and then, you know, a few black teachers who, you know, get slapped around by the colonial, you know, the white administrators, you know, and so that's what they see, right? Yeah. And of course, the idea of the Mau is demonized. You know, so such that you talk to her and she'll be like, you know, ungewaona walikuwa na kama shetani, unajua, basically. And of course, if somebody's been in the forest for 12 years,
of course,
what do you expect them to look like? Right? You know, you don't expect them to come out of the forest in suits, right? And then looking all clean cut and everything. So and so you see those deliberate efforts to indoctrinate and alienate people from their own realities, which are still ongoing, right? The challenges. And also, and I feel like our community, for example, like Meru people are one of the people who took a toll as far as our cultural alienation. We took a serious beating, especially because of how religion was used.
Yes.
Right? Because religion was used to like kinda cut through. It's like come between the people and their cultural practices.
Yeah.
Complete. It's like if you're religious, then you're anti-cultural, you're anti-culture, right? And so you find that, and that's how, you know, even entities like Yurincheke ended up being a shell in itself, right? Because these are council of elders that was kind of was like the head of the community, and they were being taken, you know, like being taken care of by the community, pretty much. But when you alienate the people from their cultural beliefs and their cultural practices, then it means everything that's associated with the culture is demonized, and so people step out of that. Alafu ndo unakuta, so now even how it's so hard to even trace a lot of our music or a lot of our folklores, and hata ukizipata Muslim ataka nikaa remixes tu juu zenye zimekuwa perpetuated through the school system, drama, music festivals. So when the lyrics, sometimes you don't even know which is the actual lyrics are, right? Unless upate mse monyako, somebody who grew around a very cultural lama older now, probably if you had lived long enough with your grandma, maybe you would have picked up a few things. And then you become a cultural custodian in yourself, right? So and there is very few people like those left, right? And hopefully we can manage to get a bit of that, and even now kind of infuse that through our music, you know, and give it a new lease in life, because we need that.
Some of the solid examples one can give, we speak of Njuri Ncheke, and we also forget that we actually had councils of women, Keama Keaka, that acted as a counter to any excesses of Njuri, because they would look after the female affairs of women and girls children, and that sort of thing. But now one of the questions we should ask is, why is it that it's Njuri Ncheke that is remaining? And even what are the implications for erasing one council which was actually supposed to act as a counterpoint, as almost a countervailing force to Njuri Ncheke. While they look at the affairs of men, they look at the affairs of women, and now they're like the intermediary. What are the implications of erasing one and leaving the other?
And even the other one that's left, it's really like, because I feel like what the council has become now, it's like their hands for hire.
I also feel the same.
If I have enough money and you know, I'm trying to get some sense of cultural clout, you know,
Meru elder.
So I can buy a bull for the council and, you know, give them some money.
You become a Meru elder.
And, you know, and then they're going to initiate me into the eldership. And then it means I have like the political blessing, right? Which it's a tragedy in so many ways, right? Because we understand, we really want to reconnect, but at the same time we also don't want to be victims of like manipulation.
That's true,
right?
That's true. And when I speak to my parents, it's very clear. They tell me that some of the songs we could not sing at home would be beaten. In my dad's case, in my mom's case, there was a social pressure. You're being told when you sing certain cultural songs, like praising Morans, you're told Mantoyang Koma, of which is like loosely translated satanic matters. But Nkoma itself, the name Nkoma means ancestors, ancestral. Nkoma Chiaba Yoyo, ancestral spirits. But now that was termed as, that name Nkoma was equated to Satan and Satanism. And when you try to express yourself culturally, even the word singer in our community, Kodharia in Kimeru is to destroy. So the person who destroys people's marriages. And the funny thing is, that's now the colonial conception of what a singer was. But originally, when I spoke to an old man from Central Imenti, a place called Kaderi, I think Kaderi is in Central Imenti, if I'm not wrong.
It's closer towards the mountain.
Towards the Mount Kenya forest. He told me the name a prophet, there are two kinds of prophets in Kimeru. Prophet in Kimeru means So the first kind is a person who actually predicts and says there's going to be something here. There's going to be a snake blowing.
That's like Shege Wakifiru.
Exactly. So the snake later on becomes a train tracks, a train blowing smoke and that kind of thing. But then the second aspect to that being a prophet is a singer was actually a prophet. Was actually taken as a prophet, because not everyone can wake up in the morning and start singing a song. It's a gift.
But also you have to look at it this way. They're the ones that pick that prophecy and broadcast it.
That is true.
And broadcast it and other singers speak it and broadcast it, because you see, if you are a singer of the other generation and you broadcast it, the singers of this generation pick it up and
broadcast it.
So the oral tradition of keeping it going, right? Mm-hmm. And you see, and for example, we have a lot of oral. Oral art forms, right? Yeah. We have Renta, we have Kirarire, we have like all these, like very different and distinct in style.
Kero, there are so many songs,
right?
Kero,
Kero. And then the Ndano songs and everything.
Yeah.
So, and I think when you look at that now, and how art in itself, right, has always been a part of. But now looking at how art now has pretty much been sterilized, right? Like it's just art has been and you say, like when you say like the old Kedaria aspect, that was because there's also another statement that I had as a kid, and I had it quite a number of times. I was like, it seated wrong with me. The old statement, and I think you've also kind of alluded to that in your recent projects, June 25th. For me, every time hearing that, always felt like that should have, it's some home guard or some colony or whatever had to have come up with that. Because for me, my counter for that is this, right? Which means like a coward goes back to their mother in one piece, right?
One piece,
But then for me, I'm like, then the hero, Nchamba, right? Because, so it's the hero that keeps the mother alive, so that there's a mother to go back home to in the first place.
That is true.
Right? So for a coward to have a mother to go back to, hero
has to be the hero who has
the warrior has to have stood in the way of danger and the mother.
For the mother to survive and receive,
And so the fact that this one became popularized, it shows like a larger scheme to mislead people, right?
To kind of raise cowardice and cowardice as the astute thing to do, the shrewd thing to do that one.
And I love that you've touched on that. Now that we're going back now to your projects, and now that kind of and now the historian in you and the artist in you kind of find a conjuncture. When even because you've alluded to that, where you're saying ogopa uishi maisha refu.
Ogopa uishi maisha marefu lakini mabaya. Kifo ni moja, shida ni kungoja. Kwa nini unagwaya?
So because that's what it's about, right? It's okay. You're going to succumb to your fear, and then you're going to live long. But then
the conditions.
What kind of life are you leading? Right? Because ndo swali kila mtu anafaa kuwa anajiuliza. Sawa? Naogopa kwenda kwa streets juu polisi wanaangusha watu. Naogopa kufanya hivi juu juu goons watatumwa nini. Lakini tutaogopa mpaka lini? Tunaona mali uoga imetufikisha. Right? We're in a generation that has kind of we've hit a threshold of patience in a way. We've hit a threshold of the all move, accept and move on. So me na somayani na like sana your aspect yenye you're coming back to your roots in a way, like you're finding a way to incorporate like our traditional elements ndani ya muziki.
Thank you.
And part of that, I think nilipenda sana Ndamburukia Nkoro.
Thanks.
Yankene,
Thank you.
Yeah, because also I feel like at the Meru side of the Mau Mau story is relatively untold. Right? And I think it's by design. Right? I don't think the Kikuyu hegemony or the Makistan whatever survives if it acknowledges the full involvement of other tribes. I'm not going to other tribes in the Mau Mau struggle. It doesn't hold water. Right? So how that hegemony has been perpetuated is by kind of taking away from the contributions of other
ethnic groups
in that struggle. Right.
I recall speaking to someone who was a boy in 1950, and there was a meeting in Nyeri. I believe it was Nyeri, and the meeting was addressed by the Kapenguria 6. This is Nyeri. This is the heartland of the Kikuyu.
Yeah.
And this is actually a former lecturer, Professor Muriuki. Remember, he told me that he took note that the person who received the loudest applause was none other than Achieng' Oneko, who had been getting funds for the Mau Mau and had been funding the Mau Mau using his networks, had been getting money. And so it was interesting that Jomo Kenyatta, who at some point many people had regarded as a leader of the Mau Mau, did not get as much applause as Aluo, who were taken to be the enemy community. And it's not true. I mean, there are also General Odongo was a general in the Mau Mau, Aluo. And so it is true that, granted that the resistance was heaviest within Mount Kenya region.
And even for that, at a certain period. Post 56, so Kimathi is captured in 56, right? Executed in 57.
Yeah.
57 onwards, there is more Merus in the Mau Mau.
That is true.
Than there are.
Actually, Meru was the last frontier.
Yeah.
It was other places had been, the resistance had been stamped out in Kiambu, in Nyeri, but Meru was a problem.
Yeah. Because there was the Nyambene, there was the Nyambene camp, and there was the Kirimara camp.
There was the Kirimara camp, that is true.
You know, and so Nyambene camp under General Musa Moriama.
Yes.
And then the Kirimara camp under General Baimungi, right?
Yeah.
And a few other generals.
Yeah, there was another general.
Ruko,
his name. Ruko was actually the one who was the leader that side.
Yeah.
Ruko was killed, and then now Mariamia kind of took
the field marshal.
Yeah, but now what makes Baimunge stand out is that he holds on until he goes on until even when we get so-called independence.
Yeah.
And Kenyatta's people kill him, and Kenyatta,
and they parade his body.
Kenyatta even mocks Baimunge. If you have gone through the newspapers, it's like, wapi Baimunge? Where is he now? You know, this is after
pretty much the same thing it does even with Kagia.
Yeah, right? more or less. Although maybe in Kagia's case he wasn't killed.
Yeah, but the mockery.
That mockery was still there.
Yeah, the mockery was there.
Yeah. So it is true that it was not just a Kikuyu affair. It might have been, the conflict might have been most intense around central Kenya, Meru.
But also you can look at that in terms of the proximity to Nairobi, because Nairobi was central.
Yeah.
Nairobi was central in that how Nairobi ends up, becoming even a town before it becomes a city. It was central to Mombasa and Jinja, because the railway line was supposed to come from Mombasa and Jinja. And Nairobi is the one place that was kind of convenient between both places.
Even as far as weather is concerned.
The weather, the resources in terms of natural resources, water, there were rivers crossing by here, so there was water to sustain everybody. So and so it initially starts as a railway depot, like a depot for the products, like the metal and everything that's required, and then ends up becoming a town and then a city. Right?
But even the idea that you also one has to to be honest, there are many ways on how one can look at the Mau Mau. I mean, I can't take that from some of the scholars who have written. They have the right to express what they want to express. But when you kind of make it a gamer thing, it kind of airbrushes out of history some of the grievances that all Africans had. You think at Calabar.
Yeah.
Calabar, there are certain places a black person couldn't step in Nairobi. Certain hotels you couldn't go to. You'd be shot if you'd cross Moi Avenue coming up this way.
Yeah.
So And this is whether you're Kikuyu, you're Luo, you will be
It doesn't matter.
You are just
like it was an apartheid.
It more or less it was an apartheid, separate development. So there are some of these narratives that if you run with a narrative and say that this was a tribal organization, you kind of make it look like these are the only people who are suffering during colonial times, which is wrong.
No, it's
and when you
totally wrong.
When you look at the way some of the early organizations against colonialism, they inspired each other. You look at Kikuyu Association, gives birth to Young Kikuyu Association. Young Kavirondo Association is side of Western Nyanza, is also born as a result. East African Association is around this period because you also had a number of Bugandas here. And I guess maybe we should look at things not even from a Kenyan perspective but an African perspective.
For sure. And the other angle that brings the African perspective also is Kibera.
Yeah.
The initial residents of Kibera are Nubians.
They are.
Right?
Yeah.
And basically there was a troop of it was like a mercenary troop.
Yeah.
Right, and and of course, and a few others who are ex-soldiers, whatever, King's African Rifles. Mm-hmm. So they're stranded in Nairobi, right? Mm-hmm. And the colonial whatever agents don't know what to do with them anymore, right? They can't send them back to Sudan, wherever they had gotten them from, and here they are. So the question is, what do we do with them? And the area around Kibera going on, it was part of an extension of Ngong Forest, right?
Yeah.
So it was a forest.
It was.
Yeah. So they're like, okay, so you guys now nyinyi just, and then to pale kwa msitu mjua vile mtajipanga. And so that's how they end up establishing this place. And so Kibera is Nubian for forest.
Forested area.
Right. And so they settle out forest, they clear forest, they build with whatever materials they can get, the discarded iron sheets and everything. And that's how. And so anybody, and because it's not a designated residential area, so anybody who's coming into Nairobi from the countryside and they have nowhere to go, you go in the one place that nobody's gonna bother. And so that's how people end up. So a lot of people just come and end up in Kibera because the one place you don't really need much, you don't need to prove much to belong in.
That's true.
Right? And that's how we end up with one of the biggest slums in Africa, which is the biggest slum in Africa at the moment, after Soweto was divided in two. Right? So, and I think now, and when you look at in terms of history, I'm not a historian by study, right? And for me, a lot of the history I've had to learn out of school, which is now where you are saying like the passion, like you have to.
Especially if you're an artist.
The need,
especially as an artist.
Because you want to come from a point of information also. Yeah. You don't want to just be saying things, right, on hearsay. And I think so how much do you feel like the historian in you, the history student in you has informed the artist?
I mean, a lot, in many ways, there are songs that are yet to be released that speak about our spirituality as a people, the idea that the adoption of Christianity came at a cost of our indigenous spiritual beliefs. And for me, I look at spirituality not in isolation of other things, because your spirituality is directly rooted to your environment. It's directly rooted to your culture. If the colonial authorities would say that your customary practices are satanic and your spirituality by essence is satanic, if you call Nkoma, which is later on became Satan, made to mean Satan, if you're going to call them the ancestors, your ancestral spirit Satan, it means you naturally will take a disdainful attitude towards the past that your ancestors were involved in. If you say Nkoma, which means ancestors, Nkoma Chiaba Yoyo, if you're going to say Nkoma is Satan, and you're going to say then the ancestral spirits are Satan, then what's the use of you going back to learn from them?
Yeah. No, because essentially
satanic.
Essentially, it's the demonization is not just in practice; it's in language, right? So you don't only demonize the practice itself; you're demonizing the language. And you ask yourself, right? You ask yourself, because this is a question I ask myself: why is it that our people are praying beneath a mugumo tree, facing the mountain, right? And then if you go to the lakeside, their spirituality is very much interwoven with the lake.
It's Namlolo.
Yeah, Namlolo.
Yeah, Namlolo.
Right? Yeah. And similar cases. So almost every indigenous community, the spirituality is interwoven with their main source of life and food. So for example, when looking at the mountain, yani lazima ujiulize kwa nini, why those particular features, si ndio?
Yeah.
Ni unzikika mlima hiyo ndo river zote zinatoka.
Yeah.
Zinatoka huko. Hizi river ndo tunakunywa hiyo maji, ng'ombe, mifugo zetu wanakunywa hizo maji. Hiyo maji ndo tunatumia ku irrigate plants zetu na nini. So essentially that's our source of life, right? In the lakeside, hiyo lake ndo hapo ndo tunavua samaki, hiyo maji bado ndo tunakunywa, ndo mifugo yetu wanakunywa na nini. So basically and even for a tree like a mugumo, like what is so unique about a mugumo? Because unachiki mugumo venye you grow like now, nini, also those roots zina hold your ground, na mchanga na nini zina hakuna erosion, hakuna nini. So it's a very holistic way of seeing things, if you ask me.
Binding.
So yeah, but now making that now and calling it idolatry, right?
Praying to a tree.
Idolatry. Sasa mnaomba mki ati hizi vitu za the worldly things, But now we're not even praying to or through whatever the worldly things. Is that we acknowledge the supremacy of a bigger, of a bigger being, of a bigger force than ourselves.
Yes.
Right? Because these are things we can't really, we may not have, in their own way, people had made sense of that, of the supreme force. And they were appreciating that, and so when you displace that whole idea, and when you contradict that whole idea, that's how we find ourselves in a confused society that we're in right now. Right?
We are confused.
Where on top of the crisis, the identity crisis pain in the center of, and so it becomes impossible for people to organize when you can't even see each other as a one, right? And kitu moja wase wako realize ni how the Mau themselves, like the fighters, when you allocate to a land, they were settled in places away from their actual homes. For me, that's deliberate displacement. Because kama ni mtu wa Nakuru umekuwa resettled Murang'a, for example, what does that do to you? It means you have no roots in Murang'a.
No, you don't.
Right? So before you gain enough, strong enough roots to become a force, an organizing force there, time is hapita. But if you are taking back to your home, there you have the social capital. Right?
That's true, yeah.
There you have a presence. There you have an organizing force. Right? So how we make sure you don't do that? We deliberately make sure we put you in a different place where you don't belong. So by the time you find a sense of belonging in that place, you're already, we have achieved what we needed to achieve, right? Which is now, but if you try to do it again, you just look like why are you taking us back there? Tushatoka huko, mbona unaturudisha nyuma? Okay. So, and I think all that is really, ukiangalia that initial Kenyatta speech akisema we need to, look into the future and stop dwelling in the past. It was like in between the lines. Ilikuwa inasema everything about the kind of country he was trying to build.
Well, he said we shall forgive but not forget.
Hapo. No, of course, but the question is who is being forgiven and who is being forgotten. Because one could say, like part of the whole demonizing of even entities like Mungiki and how pia they zimekuwa co-opted into being a militia.
So that all took place in a crucible of inequality, a lot unfair distribution of resources, perpetuation of colonialism when you think about it.
Yeah.
Because when you say that you're now a nation, a so-called nation, and the foundation of that nation is skewed to favor certain groups of people. You pocket World Bank money that was supposed to settle landless people, and you buy for you and your cronies large tracts of land. That with time would invite a lot of tension among the populace. If you're going to push landless Kikuyu from Murang'a and Kiambu and other districts to Rift Valley.
No, Rift Valley, the coast.
Yeah, so when once
settled as far as the at Kaskwale.
That's true. Once that happens, and the people who you found there, I mean, it's actually said this idea that violence only began in the 90s, what is called
state violence,
post-election violence, which itself is a misnomer, or what was in the back in the day, it was called ethnic clashes.
Yeah.
I mean, there was violence already in the 60s.
Yep.
The people who are saying, no, why this is our land, why are you guys being pushed here?
One could also argue even that the whole Russia hospital incidents was tribal, right? Because part of those seeds of tribalism were, either were planted or were kind of magnified at that particular time. Right?
I mean, the idea of tribalism goes way back, like
the divide and rule.
Divide and rule, that is absolutely true, where previously, before colonialism, there was some sort of fluid identities of one could be a Maasai, one could be my great-grandmother could speak Kimasai, a huge number. There was a lot of interaction between the Merus and the Maasais, for example.
Yeah.
For example, my home place, Kenjai, and even the neighboring place, Modhara, assimilated a huge number of Maasais. Many of our ancestors were actually Maasai.
Wayaki
Wahinga was a Maasai. So, but what colonialism did was, you stay in this boundary, in this area, and don't move to this side. Because what they were afraid of is a pan-ethnic organization, a pan-ethnic organizing of African peoples then. So what they would do is they would have you carry pass cards, and you could not move from your zone. And actually between one zone and another, you'd have an administrative post to prevent movement from one side to the other. And then even when you're employing people, you cultivate stereotypes among them. You say that the Kikuyus are dishonest, the Kalenjin are only good at handling cattle, the Luo are this, the Luo are that, people are lazy, and so on and so forth. And then with time, because the hegemonic power, what does Marxism say? Or more or less, Marxism says that the ideology of the ruling class becomes the default ideology of that society. And that's where Mkikuyu yuko hivi, Meru haezi imba.
Stereotypes. So wacha tuachie hiyo historia ya kitambo kidogo hapo. But I knew this was gonna go, like it means to say we need subsequent episodes hapa hivi juu. Easy conversation, as you can see, but as in I go deep and deeper. But now let's get closer to recent history, and Monaja, after Temaimba, kulikuwa na rap na melodies, sindio?
Melodies na rap.
Melodies and rap, which was then your second album, ama?
Yeah, well,
ama ni mixtape, ama ni?
That was an album.
All right. Album.
Yeah.
And then now your most recent album, which is June 25th. June 25th. Watu wanajua June 25th ni sindio? hapa hivi hata umewakilisha merchandise nini.
Ndio hiyo.
Yeah, so basically June 25th which in so many ways was inspired by the incidences of last year's June protest and everything.
That's
right?
True, yeah.
Nilikuwa kwa street spear on this particular day actually. And we all know what happened, what really getting into parliament, and you know, I see like the artwork itself may highlight those incidents.
Asante, big up kwa designer Eli Langat.
Yep.
Barakuda tafuta biashara yake. Barakuda advertising.
Yeah, so kuna that, and then now the music and the skits in there.
Yeah.
Like it's such a profound album.
Thank you.
Such a profound
Coming
album.
from you it means a lot.
Yeah, and the way pia ume conceptualize, right? Pia, you know, because inaanza na hiyo skit iki provide a bit of historical context, unajua. You know, you can trust the historian to, you know, to provide, you know, mnaitaga ni premise.
Next album tarabjia science and agriculture. Next album tarabjia science and agriculture, mwache kusema mimi ni historian.
Unajua nini juu agriculture, wacha mambo yako.
Ama geometry.
Only thing unajua juu agriculture ni juu unakula njugu.
Utashangaa bana. Utashangaa.
Yeah, so basically you know, I like how nini useme like hiyo idea ya kukama up na hiyo album. Of course unajua iko inspired na hizo occurrences za not just June 25th itself, but you know June and the lead up, you know, frustrations za wananchi towards the finance bill 2024. No? Yeah, so you like why did you feel the need yani ya put that in music yani na art pretty much?
I think a confluence of factors. The first is I had songs that were already speaking to what was going to go on before even the protest broke out. A song like Ukombozi.
Yeah, I know Ukombozi.
I already had written Ukombozi in 2017.
I actually see, you know, Ukombozi is the soundtrack. It's kind of like the score for this particular, you know, podcast, you know, Liberating Minds podcast. So anytime you're going into a Liberating Minds episode, and then as you finish it, like Ukombozi, that's the track.
So that's one of the factors. The second thing is also being involved in those protests.
Yeah.
Demonstrating in town, demonstrating along Wayaki Way, and having done that for years. When I was also involved in the protests later on after June 25th, I remember we were trying to organize a group of people who could be part of a political education program. As fate would have it, that did not go as planned, but we at least had a WhatsApp group. And in the WhatsApp group, when we were having a conversation among the colleagues that we had met, we were kind of floating some names, touting some names of the group that we had begun forming. And someone suggested we call it June 25th. And it just became a mental note. I didn't really take it serious then. But now later on, when I was part of the Forum Civ, I was selected to be one of the artists who would be
the fellowship,
part of the Forum Civ Activism Fellowship. Given that we were given some seed money for a project, we were requested to come up with a project that could speak to the aftermath of the protests. And that's where a song like Alafu comes from.
Yeah. So this is my favorite track.
Thanks. Alafu. Yeah. Thank you. So I just thought, like, I mean, I shouldn't just talk about after the protest. I should also, as an artist and as a historian, I felt like I should kind of spotlight, use my talent to
like document,
flash a spotlight and highlight this period in time, this turbulent period in time in Kenya's history. 2024 should not just go and people say that there were protests. Like, I think I should use my skills to amplify whatever happened, of course with a view to ensure that subsequent generations would have a rough understanding of what happened in the months of June, July, August of 2024.
And I think that's very important, Joe, because I feel like the one thing we haven't been deliberate about is documentation. Right?
That is true.
Right? We haven't been very deliberate about documentation of our history. And that's why there's so many gaps. It's like we talk about the Mau Mau struggle, and then we go into, second liberation, and then it's like there's gaps, but there were still people struggling throughout.
There were struggles
throughout those years. There was still people struggling, but it wasn't documented.
No.
It was sabotaged by those initiatives, because there was a lot of people speak of Mwa Kenya, and they think of Mwa Kenya as kupitishana hizo nini ati watu wakiibia mtihani, but they don't know that Mwa Kenya was actually a movement, a political movement in this country.
It was,
right?
Yeah.
And it was an underground movement, and that's how people ended up turning that phrase, being Sheng, turning that phrase into, how watu kuibia mtihani na kupitisha na karatasi chini ya desk, because it's an underground kind of, we're doing this, tunafanya chini ya maji, pretty much, right?
Yeah.
So that's how it was co-opted into Sheng to mean that, but it was a political movement.
It was a political movement,
right? And I think which ilianza hapa nini, hapa UN ama?
Yeah, well, not just UN, there were also other centers, but the UN definitely played a very pivotal role.
And alma mater yako, ama?
Yes, that's true. Yeah.
Were you involved in politics ukiwa kampo?
I was an artist.
Because najua hizo siasa za UN pia ni za brutal pia.
Zinakuwa brutal, but I was very much an artist. Very much like, I think towards the end was when my classmate was gunned down, GPO. And he just died in front of me. And then reading some of the literature towards the end of my time I was doing the degree. So the book Not Yet Uhuru by Jaramogi really had a profound impact on me. Later on, but for the most part I was a very artistic person. I just wanted to be in my world. I just minded my own business, writing my music, going back, listening to hip hop, practice a little bit of martial arts, read a lot. That was a routine for me. You really can't speed it up. The right time comes when you are going to be politically engaged, politically committed.
Yeah.
And so it took a while, but here we are, June 25th, and that's how I think the motive was to come up with an album that kind of underlines and highlights that time of turbulence in Kenyan history.
Yeah.
And I think June 25th is a significant date when you think of the symbolism of it. When you think of it is a day that young people took the boldest move as far as initiative is concerned, in taking the political destiny in their hands.
Yeah.
I think that was the boldest move. Have a young and unprecedented.
I tell people, you don't, to understand a bit of how powerful that whole period was, right? That shifted algorithm at TikTok completely. It obliterated it. TikTok before the protests in June,
I can see. Yeah.
Right? TikTok before those protests, ilikuwa, you go on TikTok, you need dance videos and like all sorts of funny stuff, right?
Yeah.
After June, like nowadays you go on TikTok, out of every 10 videos you watch, it's highly likely 5 of them will be political commentary.
Yeah.
And that shows you the power that the people have in terms of, because essentially you have to understand what corporations are. Corporations are after the numbers, right? And they will go where the numbers make sense.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And now, and essentially, so sometimes when I think when we're feeling helpless, we should look at things like that. If we have enough numbers, right? If we have enough numbers demanding for the right things, even the corporations would be forced to fall into an ethical choice, right? Because they need to make the right choice that goes with. So we're not as helpless as we think, right? And for me, And you and I have been a part of this process for pretty much the best part of the last decade, right? Mm-hmm. So we've been involved in protests before. We've been, we've articulated these issues in art, and so for me it was a validating moment. I'm not just a lone wolf in the jungle, howling to the moon, right? I am actually a part of a pack, and not just a pack of 1-2 people. It's a pack of thousands and millions of people, right? So we might not exactly have achieved what we intended at a particular time, but it's like a revolution is not an event, it's a process, right? And part of that process is the documentation, right?
Yeah, that plays a critical role.
And I love something else you managed to do with this album, is that you introduced the personal conflicts, right? The personal conflicts, when now you're coming from the protest and you're going to your lady who's expectant, right? And she had to put you on the spot. But at the same, she knows, she appreciates what you're doing. But at the same time,
it's coming at a cost.
Yeah, she understands the possible outcomes, and she's worried about that as well, right? Yeah. And those are some of the things that people overlook, right? Yeah. Part of the reason why our families, right? I know I have issues. My family still has issues with me being an artist, and I'm sure about your family too. It's because of how uncertain, the path of the artist is, right? So because they want the best for you, right? And by the best, they want you to be, right?
Resourceful, wealthy, possible, dependable, stable.
But that doesn't guarantee you that, right?
It does not.
So your conflicts, I think for me, important that Uli managed to bring out.
Asante,
right?
thank you.
And I think even now for Alafu, which is the favorite track, I think, it's basically Nauliza like, so what next, right? And because that's something we have to always keep on asking ourselves.
Yeah. It's
like we've made this hard milestone to Mefika. So what next, right? And I think for me, what next is, so that we don't make this conversation go on for days. So what next for Monaja?
More music, album launch, keeping on, more social commentary, more political commentary. I'm already working on another album. I wouldn't tell you the name of the album, but it's going to speak to what we are going through. I don't to act like I know everything. I just do the best. I try to keep some sort of fidelity to my artistic vision. So more music, possibly better. It depends. That's a subjective question. And tuzidi kuzidi.
Yeah. I think what next for me, I would say when the album is finally available on all streaming platforms.
Yes, right? It is. Although if you feel so inclined, you can also buy a copy from me. The merchandise is there. Just follow me on my socials. Monaja mwenyewe. Maybe I could kind of share with them the concept. The idea is this was Parliament, and these are ancestors in a different realm, not necessarily heaven, but a different realm. This is a depiction of Kimathi. This is a depiction of Jaramogi. We were supposed to have African icons, but I guess the space was not enough, so wasn't sufficient to include the icons. But these are just our elders, ancestral spirits, which colonialism would have us believe was also
we need to start,
proud of this young group getting into Parliament. And if you zoom in, this is Reject Finance Bill. There are people holding a banner. This is one of the people gunned down. People entering Parliament. The snipers are here, and that's about it. Kenyan flag Parliament.
Man, and I love how like the collaboration between now the arts, the different artistic disciplines. Like now, even for the visual artist to come as close as possible to embodying your music, you know, what is entailed in the album hapa hivi, which is something I've also been able to do, like you know, before, and yeah, but I love that, you know, because this in itself is history, right? The visuals and the music. So I'd say, what next? You can go stream Monaja's album June 25th on all digital streaming platforms, kwanza YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, you name it. And follow Monaja mwenyewe kila mahali, subscribe to his channels and everything.
TikTok, kila mahali.
Ni kama kawaida, mimi ni Dorphanage, pia mimi utanipata Dorphanage across the board kila mahali. And this is a Liberating Minds Podcast. Yeah. Subscribe, follow, listen, you know, and we need to hear your feedback, comments. Acha hapo, sisi wachia comments ikiwa open, so feel free kujibonga. Na tunashukuru, thank you, and
round 2,
peace out.
Hizi pingu zimenifunga zikanishinda kusonga mbele, nashindwa kanta shinda hapa milele. Nahitaji ukombozi sahi, nahitaji ukombozi sahi.